I am Amasewa Bediaku with this edition of Ghana Today, stories from our correspondents across the country. In the lineup, stakeholders in gender-based violence call for inclusion of counseling sessions for survivors to boost their healing process. And residents of 4 districts in the central region enthusiastic about employment opportunities as lithium deposits have been found in large quantities there. And survivors of gender-based violence (GBV) experience a range of health, psychological and social challenges. They need care and support to deal with the shame, guilt, fear, depression and other responses to the trauma they have experienced. Stakeholders recommend that GBV service must include counseling in trusted community structures that women and girls can depend on without being judged to boost their healing. Correspondent Mavis Ofei-Champon looks at the importance of psychological counseling sessions for GBV survivors.
Data from the World Health Organization (WHO) and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine shows that nearly 1 in 2 women, thus 46% of women in Africa, have suffered gender-based violence. Moreover, 3 out of 10 African women, thus 36%, have suffered intimate partner violence. In Ghana, 1 out of 3 women has been assaulted by her spouse or partner in her lifetime. These attacks, according to the Ghana Demographic and Health Survey (GDHS), range from sexual, physical, emotional, or all 3 forms of violence, which are violations of the rights of women and girls and are considered a crime under the law. According to the Ghana Family Life and Health Survey 2015, survivors of gender-based violence range in age between 15 and 60 years. Survivors of gender-based violence not only suffer significant physical trauma, but they also have to deal with consequences such as unwanted pregnancies, infections or injuries, and psychological trauma. While attempts are made to treat physical injuries, survivors face multiple barriers that keep them from accessing and receiving the psychological services they need to deal with the trauma. Failure to provide mental health support services can cause victims of gender-based violence to suffer from depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, and may lead to self-harm, isolation, and suicidal attacks.
Some of the survivors would have to go through lifelong or lifetime psychological counseling. And this is because the damage that is caused to survivors of gender-based violence is not only physical, but mental and psychological as well. Some of the definitions of gender-based violence actually include the impact on the individual's mental health, especially the definition that is given by UN Women. And because of that, you cannot take the mental health impact away. When you have to give treatment, you have to give it considering the mental health damage that has been caused. And that is why these counseling treatment or treatment through psychological counseling and various aspects of psychotherapy are important.
Every time 30-year-old Ama Theresa hears the sound of a doorknob turning, it triggers panic attack. Ama Theresa is a survivor. She was raped by her brother's friend when she was just 15 years old. She was asleep one Saturday afternoon when she heard the doorknob turn. She was surprised to see her brother's friend in her room. At first, she thought she was in a trance, but realized it was real when he lunged at her and attacked her. A neighbor who heard her screams called for help, and the rescuers broke down the door and caught her attacker before he could escape.
My brother's friend was arrested and cautioned. Since he was a family member, the family has to come in and plead on his behalf. He has to leave the community.
While survivors like Theresa may try to get legal justice, they rarely get the psychosocial support they need to heal. Many people do not know the consequences that survivors of GBV have to contend with even if their attacker is arrested and punished. Theresa and other GBV survivors suffer lasting mental and physical harm and rarely, if ever, receive the kind of support or tools they need to take control of their lives. In many cases, GBV survivors are exposed to further harm and trauma by individuals, communities or government agencies who have no respect for their dignity, body autonomy and the choices they must make to deal with their trauma and move forward with their lives. The Domestic Violence Act enacted in 2007 established Victims of Domestic Violence Support Fund, which is supposed to provide basic material support to victims of domestic violence, support the rescue, rehabilitation and reintegration of victims of domestic violence, and establish reception shelters for victims of domestic violence in regions and districts. Under the Act, survivors are supposed to receive free medical treatment including psychosocial support and counseling. But according to a 2016 report on domestic violence, survivors rarely receive any of these services. Only 1 in 3 women and men who experience domestic violence seek help from external formal or informal organizations, as they consider such trauma as largely a private family matter. Many of the survivors distrust and have had poor experience with state authorities and public services when they sought help.
There's a lot of stigma associated with abuse and gender-based violence. People feel that it's a shame to have gone through an abuse, and so most of them do not come readily with that complaint. They may come with depression or with an assault or with an anxiety disorder or a post-traumatic stress disorder, and then the assessment would reveal that they had been through some form of gender-based violence.
For survivors like Theresa, the lack of counseling is obvious. It has taken her more than a decade to get the psychological support she needed to manage the deep anxiety and fear she had, or the panic attacks triggered by the sound of a turning doorknob. She only started getting better after joining a program for GBV survivors by Inarela Plus Ghana, a non-governmental organization NGO that trains, supports and assists survivors of GBV.
Inarela Plus Ghana has helped me a lot. Through the education and counseling, I have become a better person. I used to be scared anytime someone opens a door. It takes me back to my past.
There are thousands of other survivors like Theresa who are still living with the trauma of GBV. While mental health care by specialists is a must, the basic emotional and practical support of survivors' family and community members is no less significant. Medical care is more than just treating bodily harm, wounds and infections. Health experts say, apart from the physical wounds, GBV survivors need holistic, victim-centered care that addresses the root causes of violence against women and girls and rebuilds survivors' lives based on principles of human rights and gender equality. This kind of care involves 4 main aspects: psychosocial support, medical care, access to legal justice, and reintegration into communities.
One of the ways we can encourage people to seek redress or to seek counseling for gender-based violence so that the healing process can be complete is to get people talking about the subject of gender-based violence the more. When we do it like that, stigma associated with the topic will be minimized, and then it will create awareness and educate the populace, and that alone is an empowering tool, which is in itself would empower women to speak up and get help whenever they have to without feeling stigmatized or without feeling ashamed.
Working with Ghana's Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice (SHRAD), Inarella Plus Ghana provides shelter, support and psychological care to survivors. According to the Executive Director, Mrs. Mercy Akwaheford, over 150 survivors have received counseling and regular psychosocial support and vocational training to reintegrate into their communities.
A lot has been done. When they come, we teach them skills that will enhance their lives. Because when we give them money, how long can we sustain that? So some are making fascinators, some do wedding hats, some do soap, some are doing beads, some are doing other detergents.
GBV survivors have a right to receive holistic support, including counseling, using the recommended therapies to address post-traumatic stress. Psychologists say therapy plays an important role in the healing process and must not be taken for granted by either families or survivors. Listening to a survivor's story without being judgmental, interrupting, or forcing one's own opinions on them is crucial. Legal assistance, reintegration initiatives, and socioeconomic care can help eradicate the harmful stigma around GBV, which often blames women and excuses perpetrators. Not only does this make the survivors' lives unbearable, but it also perpetuates a culture of impunity.
Family support and caregiver support is very important. They can show their support by not blaming the survivors. Sometimes the society, through their actions and their words, make the survivors feel that it is their fault that they were abused. They may, for instance, say that if you had been respectful enough to your husband, he wouldn't have beaten you. Or if you had not wore that provocative dress, this individual wouldn't have abused you or wouldn't have raped you. All of these are comments that worsen the survivor's plight, and it's been shown that perpetrators will abuse, and it is their decision to abuse irrespective of the stand of the survivor, irrespective of what the survivor does. And so it's important that society supporting families support the survivors in that state. They can also accompany them for therapy sessions and make them feel that they have their back, in addition to making them feel that it's not their fault.
Survivors of GBV need better access to quality multi-sectorial services that address their physical and mental health needs and provide protection and safety in a confidential, comprehensive, survivor-centered and respectful manner. The guiding principles for working with GBV victims and survivors include safety, confidentiality, respect, non-discrimination and honesty. It is crucial to prevent and stop GBV as it is taking place. Sufficient rehabilitation and care should aim to provide survivors with all essential services that are needed to help them move on and rebuild their lives in a dignified way.
This report was produced with the support of the African Women's Journalism
Project AWJP in partnership with the International Center for Journalists ICFJ and with support from the Ford Foundation. Mavis of Champo, GBC News, Accra.